watched. Slowly he covered the distance, getting smaller and smaller as he went. At last he landed, a ragged black shape sprawled across the sun. Everybody watched, and now they saw the monster begin to glow. Blue at first, then red, then orange. Finally, his shape was invisible. The same blazing white as the sun itself. The monster was white hot on the sun. Then they saw him returning, a blazing shape tearing itself off of the sun. This shape became red as it flew. It was writhing and growing larger. Slowly, once more, it became the black bat-winged shape of the dragon flying back to earth. Down and down, bigger and bigger, cooling as he came, until bump! He landed, this time much more heavily than before, on Australia. He landed so heavily that all over the world bells tumbled out of church towers and birds' eggs were jarred out of their nests. The monster stared down at the Iron Man. But it was hardly the same monster. His horns drooped, his face was wizened and black, his claws were scorched blunt. His crest flopped over limply and great ragged holes were burned in his wings. It had been terrible for him on the fires of the sun, but he had done it. And here he was. The fires of the sun are far, far hotter than any fires here on earth can ever be. There, he roared, I've done it. The Iron Man nodded. But his answer was to signal to the engineers. Once more they poured oil into the trough under the grid. Once more they lit it. Once more the flames roared up and the black smoke billowed up into the clear blue. And once more the Iron Man stretched himself out on the grid of the raging furnace. The Space Bat Angel Dragon watched in horror. He knew what this meant for him. He would have to go once more into the sun's flames. And now the Iron Man's hair and toes and elbows were red hot. He lay back in the flames, smiling up at the dragon, and his whole body was becoming red hot, then orange, and finally white, like the blazing wire inside an electric bulb. At this point, the Iron Man was terribly afraid. For what would happen if the flames went on getting fiercer and fiercer? He would melt. He would melt and drip into the flames like so much treacle, and that would be the end of him. So even though he grinned up at the dragon, as though he were enjoying the flames, he was not enjoying them at all, and he was very frightened. Even the engineers, who were hiding behind thick asbestos screens over a mile away along the beach, felt their hair singeing on their heads, and they too thought it was the end of the Iron Man. Perhaps they'd poured in just a bit too much fuel oil. But at that very moment, and the very second that the edge of the Iron Man's ear started to melt, the fuel was used up and the flames died. The engineers came running down to the beach. They saw the red-hot Iron Man getting off the fearful bed, and they saw him moving to and fro on the sand, cooling off. At last, the Iron Man looked up at the dragon. He could hardly speak after his ordeal in the flames. Instead, he simply pointed towards the sun and jabbed his finger towards the sun as he gazed up at the monster. That's twice, he managed to say. Now it's your turn. The monster did not laugh. He set off, up from the earth, beating his colossal wings, writhing his long, ponderous body up into the sky towards the sun. Now it was his turn, and he did not laugh. Last time had been too dreadful, but he went. He could not let the Iron Man win. He could not let the Iron Man of the earth beat him in this terrible contest. And so all the telescopes and cameras of the world watched him flying into the sun. They saw him land among the flames as before. As before, they saw his great ragged shape like an ink blot sprawled over the centre of the sun. They saw him begin to glow red, then orange, and at last they could see him no more. He and the sun were one blinding whiteness. He had done it again. But was the sun burning him up? Had he melted in the sun? Where was he? No. Here he was. Here he came. Slowly, slowly down through space, much more slowly than before. His white-hot flying body cooled slowly to red as he came, and as he grew larger, coming nearer, and he finally became once more black. And the great black shape flagged its way down through space until, bump! Heavier than ever, he landed on Australia. This time the bump was so heavy, it knocked down certain skyscrapers, sent tidal waves sweeping into harbours, and threw herds of cattle on their backs. All over the world. Anybody who happened to be riding a bicycle at that moment instantly fell off. The Space Bat Angel Dragon landed so ponderously because he was exhausted. And now he was a very changed monster. The fires of the sun had worked on him in a way that was awful to see. His wings were only rags of what they'd been before. His skin was crisped, and all his fatness had been changed by the fires of the sun into precious stones, jewels, emeralds, rubies, turquoises, and substances that had never been found on earth. And when he landed with a jolt, these loads of precious gems burst through the holes scorched in his skin and scattered down onto the Australian desert beneath. But the Iron Man could not allow himself to pity the Space Bat Angel Dragon. He signalled to the engineers. "Round 3, he shouted, and the engineers began to pour in the oil. But what was this? An enormous woofing sound. A booming, wheezing, sneezing sound. The Space Bat Angel Dragon was weeping. If the Iron Man got onto his furnace again, it would mean that he, the monster, would have to take another roasting in the sun. And he could not stand another. "Enough! Enough! Enough!" he roared. "No! No!" replied the Iron Man. "I feel like going on. We've only had 2 each." "It's enough!" cried the dragon. "It's too much. I can't stand another. The fires of the sun are too terrible for me. I submit." "Then I've won!" shouted the Iron Man, "because I'm quite ready to roast myself red hot again. If you daren't, then I've won." "You've won! Yes, yes, you've won! And I am your slave. cried the space bat angel dragon. I'll do anything you like, but not the sun again. And he plunged his chin in the Pacific to cool it. Very well, said the Iron Man. From now on, you are the slave of the earth. What can you do? Alas, said the space bat angel dragon, I am useless, utterly useless. All we do in space is fly or make music. Make music? Asked the Iron Man. How? What sort of music? Well, haven't you heard of the music of the spheres? Asked the dragon. It's the music that space makes itself to. All the spirits inside all the stars are singing. I'm a star spirit. I sing too. The music of the spheres is what makes space so peaceful. Then, whatever made you want to eat up the earth? Asked the Iron Man. If you're all so peaceful up there, how did you get so greedy and cruel ideas? The dragon was silent for a long time after this question, and at last he said, well, it just came over me. I don't know why. It just came over me, listening to the battling shouts and the war cries of the earth. I got excited. Well, I wanted to join in. Well, you can sing for us instead, said the Iron Man. It's a long time since anybody on Earth heard the music of the spheres. It might do us all good. And so it was fixed. The space bat angel dragon was to send his star back into the constellation of Orion, and he was to live inside the moon. And every night he was to fly around the earth, through the heavens, singing. So his fearful shape, slowly swimming through the night sky, didn't frighten people, because it was dark and he couldn't be seen. But the whole world could hear him, a strange soft music that seemed to fill the whole of space, a deep, weird singing, like millions of voices singing together. Meanwhile, the Iron Man was the world's hero. He went back to his scrapyard, but now everybody in the world sent him a present. Some only sent him a nail. Some sent him an old car. One rich man even sent him an ocean liner. He sprawled there in the yard, chewing away, with his one ear slightly drooped, where the white heat of that last roasting had slightly melted it. As he chewed, he hummed in harmony to the singing of his tremendous slave in heaven. And the space bat angel's singing had the most unexpected effect. Suddenly, the world became wonderfully peaceful. The singing got inside everybody and made them as peaceful as the starry space and blissfully above all their earlier little squabbles. The strange, soft, eerie space music began to alter all the people of the world. They stopped making weapons. The countries began to think how they could live pleasantly alongside each other, rather than how to get rid of each other. All they wanted to do was to have peace, to enjoy this strange, wild, blissful music from the giant singer in space. And our final picture, which I don't know if you'll see, but it's a city landscape with a night sky and the moon high above, and this dark shadow swooping through the sky. And that's the end of The Iron Man by Ted Hughes. And what a beautiful ending. How everybody managed to live peacefully and in harmony with each other. I definitely think there's a lesson that we can learn there.